your financial advisor is at the end of the day a therapist.
Money with 1 rupee today is worth a lot more than a 1 rupee a year later. It's only 35, then I realized, okay, I have to now start taking charge of my money.
All your investments are from a long-term perspective and
Insurance are more like safety nets. Yeah, so financial advisor is therapist for your financial health.
You probably know a wide variety of personalities, probably at home and even in your friend circle. Someone who is very short-term focused, another who is very long-term with his life goals. Similarly, when One Finance team got in touch with me regarding the MoneySign assessment test, I learned that they've used a research which is decades old, into identifying different types of personalities and mapping them with various zoomorphic signs, which essentially means that you're trying to allocate a person's personality type with maybe a tiger, an elephant, a shark, and in some cases, even a turtle. And it's said that turtles have very long lives. So today's guest, Mr. Sumit Ramani, is actually a vigilant turtle. With this discussion, we actually attempt to understand how he thinks about life, what's his relationship with money. And let me tell you, he's an actuarial consultant where his life's professional job is to calculate probabilities about life. So it couldn't be any more fitting. Hi Sumit, welcome to the show.
Hi Sarthak, thank you for having me here.
I'm sure a lot of the viewers today would want to know what an actuarial consultant really does.
Yeah. So I wear two hats. One of them is that of an actuarial consultant. And I have very strong focus on insurtechs. Insurtechs are essentially tech companies trying to solve an insurance problem with an intention to eventually collaborate with an insurer or a reinsurer, because that's really their end game. The other hat that I wear is that of a co-founder of an insurtech, which is focused on personal finance. It's called ProtectMeWell. It's an API-first comprehensive financial planning engine.
So I noticed your Twitter bio says that you want to achieve financial independence in the next 2 years, which really intrigued me to know that what is your definition of financial independence and what is the number you'd probably want to hit?
Yeah, I think that's something I talk about also on Twitter, because I think everyone should try and aspire to achieve financial independence. Retiring early is something that someone can choose to do it or not do it. But financial independence is something which everyone should aspire for, largely because in most cases, I don't think we would end up continuing to work till 60. Some of us would become redundant much earlier. And if we haven't achieved financial independence and if we have not worked actively towards it, some of us are going to have a tough life. Switching back to my definition of financial independence, I think once you get to a point where your assets could take care of your expenses, you are financially independent. And when I say expenses for rest of your lifetime. I won't talk about the specific number because that I think creates an anchor bias, and it could be different for different people depending upon what their lifestyle has been or what they want to do during their entire lifetime. But maybe I'll talk about how it started and how far I am and what helped, those kind of things which would be a lot more relevant. So my financial independence journey actually started when I was 35. For the context, I'm 38 now. That's when I started chasing it actively. Up until then, I was earning reasonably well and saving money, investing in random mutual funds based on tips maybe. But yeah, so by 35, when I was already an independent actuary, and those who are into consulting or freelance, they would realize that time is really translates to money when you are a consulting actuary or anyone who is consulting, right? Which also means that everyone is after your time and you're willing to rent it to make money. And that's really when it hits you hard that you don't have control on your time. And that's when I started thinking about what do I do to have control on my time. and then eventually realized that achieving financial independence is how you basically get control on your time, because once you have achieved financial independence, you don't have to earn to ensure that your expenses are taken care of, and that's when you choose to do what you really like to do. So up until 35, I had sizable assets, but all scattered in suboptimal assets, generating suboptimal returns. Because the focus in between 20 to 30s was to qualify as an actuary. Then when I qualified, soon I started on my own, and focus was to build a business. It's only 35, then I realized, okay, I have to now start taking charge of my money. I read a couple of books, learned from a few people, and then I realized, okay, the idea is to have a retirement corpus, get to a point where it essentially starts taking care of your expenses, and at the same time you should have enough safety net built in so that your financial journey is not hindered because of any unforeseen instances, right? So while it started, I also started reflecting on it as to where I am, how do I do the course correction. And then I also realized what has helped me to get to a point where I'm 35 and targeting to achieve financial independence 40. Because most people who achieve financial independence by 40 typically start in mid-20s or early 20s. So I think one of the things that helped was basically frugality in some sense, which I learned while growing up. Never lived beyond my means, spent a lot less than I could have probably, which meant that my expenses were low. Equally, one of the important factors, which is basically the raw material for financial independence, is money, right? So your income, which increased significantly once I started pursuing actuarial career path. Basically it increased at a rapid pace, right? Anyone who knows who actuaries are would know that actuaries earn a lot higher than an average individual with the same amount of experience in a different field. So income kept on growing. Expenses did not quite catch up. So lifestyle inflation did not kind of eat up into my income. So there was asset lying in, the raw material was there. Equally, now over a period of time, of course, given what I do or what my skills are around finance, I knew what assets made more sense for me. So sold off everything that I had. I was sitting on cash. I exactly knew where I wanted to invest in, and then COVID happened. So I had money, I knew what to do, and the opportunity presented itself. And that's when I went all in March 2020, invested bulk of my money in equity. So my 95% of my investment is in equity, and that kind of accelerated it. But then again, that hasn't changed. Since I also knew where I'm investing in, whatever haven't happened between the market, in the market between 2020 and now, hasn't kind of impacted me or impacted my day-to-day life. The market couldn't go up and down, but my heart still beats at the same pace, or my mood doesn't swing along with Sensex, for example.
How do you classify equities from a risk standpoint that you look at it? Do you think it's a safe asset or it's a risky asset?
So risk is when you don't know what you're investing in, right? So, and if you are not investing in equity, that's also a risk. So in my head, if you are looking at it from a long-term perspective, you have horizon of good 10, 15, 20 years, you're investing in companies that are run well, it's a safe bet in general. What could be a risk is not investing in equity in that sense, because most of us, let's say if we start working at 25, continue to work till 60, which I don't think is going to be the case with most of us. So we'll work for 35 years, have to take care of expenses and lifestyle for that 35 years, and most of us would also live for 100 years. So you have to take care of expenses and lifestyle for next 40 years. So what is the chances that you would earn enough in 35 years to take care of your lifestyle for next 75 years, unless your money starts making money and beats inflation? So the only way you do it is by investing in equity.
And you also mentioned 95% of your investments are in equity. So where is the 5% and what do you do with it?
Yeah, it's some of it is in debt because I invest through NPS and can't do much about it. It's if you invest in tier 1,
Which is National Pension Scheme.
yes, that's really it basically. And some of it is in PPF, which I've stopped contributing to now. Like everyone else, I started contributing to PPF because my parents forced me to.
Quite surprised when you mentioned that 5% of the remaining is also invested in retirement funds, and we were speaking about early retirement and financial independence. But I was hoping at least 5% would be in crypto or startups or some such assets. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, when I say 5% of my remaining assets is also in retirement fund, I do have exposure to crypto and startups both, but I do not account for those assets when I'm thinking of my retirement planning, because these are very, very volatile, right, by nature of it. I did invest in crypto because I was helping one of the clients who are blockchain powered gaming company, and I bought their NFTs. And this was 2017, way before people started thinking about, maybe 2018, right? Way before people started talking about it. So I got in when Ethereum was $200 per piece, right? And bought their NFTs when they were not known, right? I bought really their first few pieces. And then they got visibility, and both the value of NFTs in ETH terms, that is Ethereum terms, increased, and Ethereum also increased. So there is some amount of money, a reasonable amount of money that is in crypto, but what I had invested was a small amount. At the same time, since it's volatile and it has been volatile, I do not account for crypto asset as part of my retirement planning. Same goes with startups. I've invested in 2 startups. Again, 2 startups that I was closely working with. Both have done reasonably well. Incidentally, both of them are 10x. But again, I do not account for them unless the money is in my bank account.
Okay, so I wouldn't wish this upon anyone, but you've told us about how much in terms of X, so 10x or more you've made in your crypto and startup investments, but they're not in money terms in your bank as of now.
Yeah.
What if, and God forbid, you were to not see that money in your bank account, the markets change, something happens, how would that make you feel?
It would make me feel bad. There were also times when I had sleepless nights because of the buoyant crypto markets. But now, over a period of time, I've made peace with it, at least to the fact that to the level that this is not going to impact my financial independence journey, because that's anyway going steady, and I all set to achieve it in 2040, right? So, 2025, by the time I turn 40. So yes, it would hurt me because in a way it's my money, but if I don't, but then that's also, I mean, you can't do much about it, because if you've taken a risk, you can't say that I can only have upside but not the downside.
Do you also invest in lifestyle products which also have high volatility but tend to give great returns in certain markets? For example, when a lot of people actually invest in Rolexes, or Air Jordans, and what are your thoughts on those categories?
So there was a point in time in my life when I said once I qualify as an actuary, I would buy a Tissot, right? But once I qualified, I did not feel like. I don't wear a watch. I have not worn it for last 15 years. I use iPhone 7. The latest version that you have in the market is iPhone 14. So I've gotten to a point where lifestyle products do not entice me, and I've not seen them. I do not feel they do not entice me enough to use them, and I obviously do not see them as an investment product.
Okay. So you also mentioned you travel with your wife. Have you observed any differences in her spending behavior compared to you?
Yeah, so I think she is a lot more cautious about money than I am. That's one of the important traits, and that has kind of helped us, right? Because if we would think about spending money very, very differently, we wouldn't have gotten to a point where we could say we're going to achieve financial independence by 2025, because it's not that I who is going to achieve financial independence, it's a family, as a family we achieve it, right? So her part in the vision and contribution to it in terms of how we spend money has been she has been very supportive, and her part has been phenomenal.
So how is she cautious? Is it cautiousness only from the point of view of spending money or also investment types?
Both. The reason my exposure in equity is 95% is because her exposure to equity is zero.
Oh,
So
she
at a
invests
family
mostly
level,
in,
yeah, in
debt
PPF.
or insurance and
Yeah.
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 And what do you think about insurance? Have you, because for a lot of people, you know, I've observed who come from families of, say, parents have been professionals or been in some kind of business and have built a substantial corpus. They feel, owing to the fact the amount of inheritance I have or the wealth I have, insurance is not a product for me. Has that been similar for you?
No, it has not been, especially since in my previous avatars I've designed and priced insurance products, right? So I understand utility of insurance. I see that in right perspective, and I think insurance are more like safety nets, which ensure that your financial journey is not impacted because of unforeseen instances. For example, if I'm already on my way to, if I'm on my way to achieve financial independence, and I get disabled for certain reasons, right? So I'm not going to achieve it, and it also means that my income would stop while my expenses would continue. And that is a very difficult situation to be in if you are already not financially independent. So for example, someone like Mukesh Ambani, he doesn't need any form of insurance because any instances which could be covered by insurance in the personal life, he has enough assets to take care of it and not worry about the expenses towards that instance. For example, let's say if he has a jazzy car, right, or a flashy car worth few crores, even if it doesn't exist tomorrow for whatever reasons, he could buy another without worrying about it. So if you've gotten to a point where expenses because of unforeseen events do not impact your lifestyle, then insurance is not useful for you. But if it's going to change course of action for you in your financial journey, then insurance becomes very, very important. So for example, just to kind of continue that thought, once I've achieved financial independence and then I'm no longer around, once I'm achieved financial independence, I would just probably discontinue my term insurance, because even if I'm not around and term insurance is not there, my family could take care of itself because we've already gotten there.
I also see this pattern in your answers where I observe things like you mentioned, you know, what if I were to be disabled and not able to work? And I understand that's a very rational thought process which everyone should have. However, given everyone's environments and or maybe just their how they're wired, you know, genetically or through their upbringing, not everyone possibly has the time or even the thought process to sit and think about, if I were to get disabled and I'm unable to earn money, what will happen to me? So do you feel that's a slight sense of, say, positive paranoia which has fueled you towards financial independence, and that paranoia you look at positively? I mean, I don't mean it in a negative way whatsoever, but do you feel other people in your family also think like that, or they would think this is you being a little extreme?
I think my family would think that I'm way too extreme. So, for example, recently posted about this upcoming road trip, wherein I, my wife, my daughter, my parents, my sister, and my brother-in-law are all planning to go from point A to point B. And in my mind, I'm thinking that going in the same car may not be a good idea. So it's my paranoia is at that level, and this is not something which I explain to them, right? Because if you go in the car, in one car, and if that car crashes, the entire family is gone, right?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So I'm a bit extreme, but I would say it's not that I live in a fear that this could happen. It's just that by training, I'm taught to think about risk, and think about risk as an event that could happen. It doesn't mean that I would think about that event every second, But my point is, if the event happens, are we covered?
So you said your training has led to that, which is you being an actuary, you study risk and you study probabilities. So maybe it's wired you a particular way. But do you think as a young child or maybe in school, also you would think of these probabilities and that has led you to pick such a path? Were you always like this or you've changed over the past years?
I think a part of it has always been there. I would always plan things well. When you plan things well, essentially you are saying, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? What are you going to do about it, right? So maybe I did not know the word risk or true meaning of it, but I think I've always been like that, thinking about instances which are rare but still possible.
So any other things that you've done in life to kind of hedge against risk, which maybe we guys could learn from and also emulate? I mean, I never thought of having two cars. I think my incentive of having two cars was have one even number, another odd number, because the Delhi government could just implement odd even any random day. But I never thought about it like this. I think I'll also be happy because if I live with my parents and of course with my wife, and if my wife and I were to travel in one car and my parents in another, I think it also leads to better driving experience, because what we like in terms of music and what my parents like in terms of music may be completely different. So now I'm always thinking about, oh, this is a great input or learning I've taken away from this conversation. Any other place where you've done this?
Well, let me think of an example that is relevant. So talking about another example, maybe I will talk about something more relevant. It's not fun, it's insurance. So specifically talking about medical insurance. I was talking to someone recently and he thought I'm over-insured, but in my mind, I'm still not. So maybe let me talk about the kind of insurance cover that I have on the medical side. And then let's see if you also think that I'm over-insured or not. So I have a medical cover of about 1 crore. I have a critical illness cover of 1 crore, a disability cover of another crore. If you think about it from today's perspective, yes, I'm over-insured because no disease or no medical situation would cost me 1 crore, right? And generally, the average is about 2-3 lakhs. In extreme cases, let's say in blood cancer, it would cost you about 40-50 lakhs. But it's equally rare, right? So let's say average in a slightly rarer situation, the hospitalization could cost you 10-15 lakhs. So to that extent, yes, I'm over-insured. But think about it in this way. Medical inflation is in double digit. So the cost of treatment would continue to increase. And in 20-30 years' time, 1 crore would look like a reasonable number and it might even look smaller. The way insurance works is insurance companies would want to get you in when you are still healthy and would not look at you when you no longer continue to look at it. Okay, when you no longer look like a good risk, right? So if you already are diagnosed with a medical situation, they won't insure you. So getting in early, getting to a point where you are already reasonably covered for next 20-30 years, in my mind is a good idea, but most people would think that I'm over-insured.
Got it. So while we've spoken a fair bit about financial independence, there's also a concept of financial well-being, which covers other areas like not just making so much in terms of assets that your future is secured and you don't have to work, but financial well-being as a concept is more around how do you enjoy your money, how do you spend it, and you could be working and you probably have not achieved financial independence, but as long as you've taken these risks as well as your expenses into consideration and made a plan for yourself, that's probably called financial well-being. So imagine financial independence was out of the picture. What kind of thumb rules or philosophies or first principles would you follow for yourself to say that yes, I have financial well-being, I'm not splurging, but I'm also enjoying my life?
Yeah, I think in my head there are 4 components of financial well-being. One is having control on your time, which you achieve by financial independence. Second, having health by your side, because there's no point having money and not being healthy, right? Third is having social circle, because how do you basically engage with others, right? I mean, that defines your happiness. If you have money, you have health, but no friends, then what do you do about it, right? And when I say health, health again has two components, both the physical and the mental health. So while financial independence would happen by 2025, or the other pieces is what I'm now also focusing on. So I play tennis every day, meditate for half an hour, which I've been doing for now last 3 years. Actively building my social circle where I live, and when I travel, if I'm traveling for a conference, I'll extend my stay to meet 5 different people. Some of them I would be meeting probably for the first time. So I'm actively building, ensuring that both my physical and mental health are in the right shape, and building my social circle.
So I can understand that when you say how your investments work, or when you're going towards financial independence, you're getting assets like equities or other businesses to work for you so that you don't have to work and your time is free. But for a lot of younger people, till the time they haven't reached maybe like the target age you have in mind of 40, by when you should be financially independent. Imagine someone who's 20 or 25, in their early 20s. Do you have any tips on what should they do to ensure that they are financially well taken care of, or they're experiencing their money in the right way?
Yeah. So there are only few things that one should do when you're 20, 25. In my head, it's very simple. Focus on increasing income, because if you're doing it right, you could double your income in 2 years. There's no way you could double your assets in 2 years, right? And do it year on year. So when you are in 20s, the focus should be on upskilling and increasing income. Ensuring that you have safety nets, because if those are not there, your financial journey would take a hit, which means that having emergency corpus, which typically in most cases is 6 months expenses, but it could be more or less depending upon your individual situation. Having insurances, largely health cover and disability cover to start with, term insurance if you have dependents on you. These couple of insurances, emergency funds, and focusing on income, and depending upon how you want to live, what kind of lifestyle you wish to have, invest a sizable part of it in equities. You could do it in mutual funds. You could, if you have time and skills, invest in equities. Most of us do not have that skills, right? And most of us do not have the right behavior, because if your particular stock decreases by 40%, it would give you sleepless nights. So most of us probably do not have the right kind of behavior and skill for investing in equities. And if all that sounds difficult, rely on a financial advisor. But the focus should still be on increasing income.
So you mentioned relying on a financial advisor. How does a person like you find an advisor? Have you ever had an advisor?
No, but that's largely a function of a couple of things. One, I have now understanding of my behavior, which is one of the important aspects of a financial advisor. So think about behavior in this sense. If I were to invest your money, my emotions would not change with how that money is behaving. Yes, I'm professionally liable to ensure that your money is taken care of, but I won't check portfolio every day, because there is some detachment with your money, right? So I take my decisions rationally and not based on emotions. So that's the first piece a financial advisor brings in, and that's the most important piece. In my case, I've understood myself and my behavior, and my investments are aligned. Second, given my training, I also have reasonable understanding of financial instruments. So that's the second piece which is important. If you don't know what you're investing in, then you are going to make huge mistakes, and there may not always be time for course correction. The third reason, which I think everyone should do, since it's your money, you should take charge of it. You may not want to invest actively or actively manage it, but you should get to a point where you understand what's going on. You should get to a point where you could challenge your financial advisor. Challenge in a healthy way, right? Not trying to find out faults, but see if it makes sense and it's aligned to your behavior or not. So in my case, I haven't because I think I'm in a special situation, but not everyone gets to this point, or many people take a while to get to this point, and not everyone has to wait for 35 years to turn 35 before you realize this.
So what I'm hearing is that a good financial advisor would be someone who helps take you towards self-awareness, where you understand yourself better and they can guide you in the right direction, ask the right kind of questions. Second, educate you after understanding you better, and then seeing that these are the gaps that they probably need to fill. And then at the third step, be a good sounding board where you feel that, okay, now I'm educated, but this person understands me, so maybe I can discuss things better with them. And this is typically, if you think about it, the role of a therapist. And what I personally see is, so as an iBanker and someone who coaches entrepreneurs on building their businesses, I mostly introduce myself saying I'm almost like a therapist to you, because we can sit down every month in a closed room and no one is going to judge you. Whatever you can't tell anyone else about your fears and your emotions and about the kind of risk you're taking in your business and what that makes you feel, you can tell me. We'll collectively try and plug gaps in what kind of information or education we need, and I can be the right kind of sounding board to help you take the right decisions. So I'm assuming now the same definition of a therapist does not just apply to mental health or to startups and entrepreneurships where I've experienced it, but also in terms of money. And your financial advisor is at the end of the day a therapist. And what I'm really liking is the fact that the whole stigma attached to the tag of using a therapist is now going away, where people look at it as a great investment in understanding yourself rather than something which is used only for course correction. So I'm glad people now understand, and you kind of shed light on it in such a beautiful way. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so financial advisor is therapist for your financial health.
Absolutely.
Equally, I think it's important to highlight more on the behavior. It could be quite varied, and it could be varied between siblings as well, right? So I didn't mention about my 95% of my asset being equity. 95% assets of my sister is basically debt fund. We are siblings, brought up by same parents, raised in a very similar situation, but when it comes to money, and when it probably also comes to life, we behave very, very differently. So just because I behave in a certain fashion, others should not copy me or basically try and follow me, because the behaviors could be very different. I could maybe stomach a loss of 40% or a notional loss of 40%. Not everyone would be able to. So while knowing what are the good instruments or good mutual funds to maybe invest in, that's not really enough. What you also need to do is align it with your behavior. I think that's where a lot of value a financial advisor brings in.
I'm surprised to see how in another discussion, another guest happened to mention that they are heavily invested in equities and their sister is heavily in debt, and that kind of balances things out. And while I hate to make it gender focused, but do you believe that our gender also in some way impacts how we think about money or how we invest money?
It does in many ways, right? And I think it's the answer lies not just in upbringing, and it also lies in evolution, right? So not getting into details, but the answer is yes.
Okay. So if gender does really make that kind of a difference, which means any kind of advice given on the internet, which is blanket saying this is a thumb rule that everyone should follow, would probably also require some kind of tweaking based on not just age and goals, but also gender.
I would say it should start with behavior, and behavior would automatically encapsulate the gender part of it.
Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you. Great. So, Sumit, you took the One Finance MoneySign test to get to know your money personality, and I have your report card. You're a vigilant turtle, and the strengths of a vigilant turtle are consistency and longevity. And weaknesses, on the other hand, are you have a low risk appetite and cautiousness. I mean, that's something that's more than evident in what you said. How much do you relate to these characteristics?
A large part of it, right? So, I mean, the weaknesses part we have discussed in detail. Uh, on consistency and longevity, right? So, I think I've been, if I look at it in terms of my investments, although I have kind of changed how I invest over a period of time, but that's, I would think, was largely because I did not have any framework around it, right? So now I have framework, and my SIPs have been continuing for good 3-4 years in the exact same fashion. They increase in amount, but they have been very, very consistent. So in fact, I have now 3 bank accounts, one where money comes in, one wherein I transfer X amount for expenses, monthly expenses, and another account, the third account, where money goes in towards investment so that SIPs can be taken care of. So just so that SIPs could be consistent, right? And I think talking about longevity, I'm great believer of the fact that all of us would live for 100 years, most of us, uh, which is one aspect of longevity. The second is that if you're going to live for 100 years, you should have enough money to be taken care of for 100 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sumit, for being with us in this conversation. This was very enlightening and very interesting for us to actually meet with a vigilant turtle and see how many of these characteristics actually fit in your personality. And I'm quite surprised that they really do. With this, I invite all of you to find out your money sign.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.